The stars above Valis 9 were sharp and clear, like shattered glass scattered across velvet. Elias Brandt stood alone on the ridge, wrapped in an old Terran military coat, the collar pulled high against the morning chill. He cradled a dented steel mug of coffee in his gloved hands and watched the sky, as he did every day at dawn. Except this dawn was different. In the distance, 3 faint trails streaked silently across the upper atmosphere, Union Imperial dropships. No fanfare, no declaration, just the slow, inevitable descent of power. He didn't flinch, didn't curse, just sipped his coffee and muttered, "So, you've come at last?" For 37 years, he'd lived in the mountains above New Carthage, a farming colony founded by survivors of Earth's fall. He'd come here not to forget, but to be forgotten. The Terran Defense Forces were long gone. Earth was dust. And Elias Brandt, once a decorated commander, was just another relic. Down in the valley, life stirred. Colonists moved like ants, unaware of the storm that had arrived. Or perhaps they knew. Perhaps they'd simply accepted their fate. But Brandt had seen what came after surrender. He still remembered the smell of burning orbital platforms, the screams transmitted over dying comm channels, the look in the eyes of a species that believed they'd broken humanity. They hadn't. Not completely. Not yet. The knock came at midday. Sharp. Desperate. He ignored it. Another knock. Then a voice. Young. Frantic. "Commander Brandt?" He frowned. No one had called him that in decades. "Sir, we—" They landed 2 clicks outside the southern edge. No demands, no contact. They're setting up a command post. Armed. Still silent. "We need someone who's seen them before. Someone who—" The door opened with a long, reluctant creak. Elias filled the doorway like a statue carved from frost and memory. "I'm not a commander," he said. The boy straightened instinctively. Grease-stained overalls, wide eyes. Barely 20. "My name's Leo," the kid said. "I work maintenance on the turbines. My father, he said you fought during Earthfall." Elias stared at him, then turned and walked back inside. The message was clear, but Leo stepped over the threshold. "We don't have weapons. We don't have soldiers. We have old farming drones and hand tools. They'll take the colony, press us into labor, or worse. You know what they do." Elias didn't answer. He stood over a dusty crate in the corner of the cabin, its surface covered in old canvas. Leo hesitated. "There's a rumor about something buried in the North Ridge. Some kind of war relic." Elias looked at him, something cold and calculating stirring behind tired eyes. "Follow me." They hiked in silence. The wind howled through dead trees and snow-bitten rocks. As they crested the ridge, Leo spotted the jagged edge of a metal structure protruding from the ice. A hangar door, ancient, half-collapsed. Elias knelt by a rusted panel, pulled a small device from his coat, and slotted it in. The mountains rumbled. The ground shook. Massive pistons groaned, gears churned, and the door began to slide open for the first time in decades, revealing a cavernous interior cloaked in shadow. Inside, buried beneath frost and silence, stood a Terran strike cruiser, obsolete by modern standards, covered in scars, but intact. Leo's jaw dropped. "What is that?" Elias exhaled slowly. "Vanguard 1, last of the pre-fall warships. They called her Echo. She was mine." The ship's onboard AI flickered to life as they stepped closer. A slow, synthetic voice broke the silence. "System recognition. Commander Elias Brandt. Status, inactive, 13,571 days, awaiting reactivation protocol." Leo turned to him, stunned. "You kept it hidden all these years?" Elias looked at the ship, not with pride, but with something deeper. Memory. Regret. Duty. "I buried her the day Earth died," he said. "But it seems ghosts don't like staying buried." The lights inside the hangar snapped on in sequence, like an awakening predator testing its muscles after a long hibernation. The walls, blackened by time and frost, now pulsed with the steady heartbeat of Echo, the last Vanguard-class warship of the Terran Defense Forces. Leo stood frozen in place, staring up at the angular mass of the cruiser. It's huge. No, Elias said quietly. She's small by today's standards, but she remembers how to kill. The old man moved with purpose now, boots echoing across the steel floor as he approached the central terminal. Frost cracked under his feet. Above, dust spiraled in slow columns, disturbed by the stirrings of the awakening AI. Reactivation in process, system status, 74% functional, weapon systems offline power. Core, stable crew, insufficient. Still mouthy after all these years, Elias muttered, typing in a string of commands. Run diagnostics on propulsion. I want maneuvering thrusters online by sundown. Complying. Leo stepped cautiously toward him, eyes darting between the blinking panels and the towering hull. You can't be serious, he said. You're going to fly her? Elias didn't look away from the console. I'm going to fight with her. The silence between them was heavy. They'll have a fleet, Leo said. Orbital cannons, shields. And we've got, what, one ship? One man? Not just one man, Elias corrected. One man who remembers how to make empires bleed. They spent the rest of the day inspecting the ship. Leo followed Elias through narrow corridors and maintenance shafts, guided by the low hum of returning power. The ship creaked and groaned like an old warrior stretching sore limbs, aching but not broken. She was built to survive a direct nuclear barrage, Elias explained. Shielding's outdated, sure. Weapons are antique. But the hull? The systems? Built by people who knew they'd never get a second chance. At the engineering deck, they found the power core, still functional, though running on backup regulators. Leo looked around at the analog panels and manual override levers, overwhelmed. I'm no soldier, he said quietly. I fix turbines. I patch water lines. Elias placed a hand on the console. That makes you more valuable than you think. This ship doesn't care about medals. She cares about hands that know how to work. Leo blinked, unsure whether that was an insult or praise. By nightfall, the atmosphere had shifted. Outside, the wind screamed against the mountains. Inside the hangar, fire had returned to Elias's eyes. He stood in the command chair for the first time in nearly 4 decades. The leather had cracked. The seat groaned under his weight. But it felt like coming home. Command seat occupied. Welcome back, Elias. He didn't smile, just leaned forward and stared at the primary view screen. Bring up local scans, he ordered. The screen flickered, showing a tactical map of the surrounding area. 3 Imperial dropships had landed outside New Carthage. More were arriving. No signals of heavy resistance, just clean, methodical occupation. Same pattern as Celestis Prime, Elias murmured. Come soft, then tighten the fist. Probable objective. Strategic mineral harvesting, likelihood of civilian compliance. 89%. Projected casualties if military occupation completes. High. Damn right. He stood and turned to Leo. Get some rest. Tomorrow we teach this colony what the word resistance really means. That night, Elias sat alone in the hangar staring at the ship. He remembered the last time he flew her, during Earth's final hours. He remembered being ordered to stand down, to retreat and preserve what was left. He had disobeyed, fought through 5 cruisers just to buy time for a refugee convoy. It hadn't been enough. He had buried the ship in shame. Now, the ghosts of Earth were awake again, and he would not let them be buried a second time, not while he still breathed. By morning, the cold above Valis 9 had turned sharp enough to draw blood, but down in the valley, the real wound had already begun to open. Imperial banners flapped over the administrative dome of New Carthage. Gray-uniformed officers, tall and motionless, directed the flow of colonists into controlled checkpoints. Drones hovered silently overhead, scanning retinas, logging identities. The population submitted, not out of loyalty, but fear. The Empire didn't come with guns first. It came with calm voices, structured sentences, and a promise. You are now part of something greater. They said it everywhere they landed. And everywhere, it was a lie. Back in the mountain hangar, Elias Brandt watched it all through Echo's long-range optical feeds. They've already set up jamming towers near the South Ridge, he muttered. They're sealing the colony off from comms. Leo, adjusting a stripped panel in engineering, looked up. To keep word from getting out? No. To make sure help can't get in. Recommendation, Echo's AI voice chimed in. Immediate sabotage of key infrastructure may delay Imperial assimilation. Leo's eyes widened. Wait, what do you mean by sabotage? Elias stood, walking toward the ship's ordnance bay. Exactly what it sounds like. 2 hours later, they were back in the snow. Leo's heart pounded as they climbed the ridge on foot, packs slung over their backs. Inside were 3 EMP charges scavenged from Echo's supply vaults. Low yield, short range, but powerful enough to fry comms nodes and disable surveillance gear. This isn't a war yet, Leo said as they crouched behind a rock outcrop. But if we do this, it's already a war, Elias cut in. They just haven't fired the first shot yet. Below them, the first jamming tower loomed like a silver needle in the snow. Elias moved with terrifying precision, fast, silent, efficient. Leo tried to keep up, fingers trembling as he wired the charge under the access panel. The beeping timer lit up green, to minus 90 seconds. They fell back to cover, the wind howling louder now. Why fight them? Leo asked suddenly. They're bigger, stronger, more advanced. They're not better, Elias said flatly. And they're not braver. He stared down at the tower. Earth didn't fall because we were weak. It fell because we trusted too long. Let that be our last mistake. The tower erupted in a blast of white light and static scream. Sparks danced like fireflies in the snow as the structure folded inward, systems collapsing, then silence. Until the alarms began. The colony reacted instantly. Imperial patrols flooded the streets. Checkpoints hardened. Drones swarmed. And amid the chaos, whispers spread like wildfire. The old commander has returned. He has a ship. A real one. He's going to fight. Some dismissed it as a rumor. Others hoped. A few began to believe. Back in the hangar, Elias and Leo barely made it inside before Echo sealed the bay doors behind them. Leo dropped to his knees, panting, shaking. That was insane. They're going to come looking. They already are. Elias tapped a nearby terminal. Echo displayed an overhead scan. 4 scout skiffs had broken from the Imperial garrison. Their trajectory was clear, north into the mountains. They're coming here? Leo asked, eyes wide. They think it's just an old man in a shack, Elias said. Let's give them a proper welcome. He moved to the helm console and keyed in a sequence. The ship's power core surged and a low thrum spread through the floor. Mobility online. Weapon systems. Partial armament available. 2 arc turrets, 1 plasma pulse bay. Shall we prepare for interception? Elias's voice was cold steel. Echo. Light the sky. Outside, the storm thickened. Snow began to fall in sheets, swirling like ghosts. And through it, the last warship of Earth rose from her mountain tomb, engines burning hot, hull gleaming with frost, guns turning toward the heavens. Snow whipped across the sky like smoke from a battlefield not yet born. From below, the peaks of the northern ridge seemed quiet, serene, just another mountain range in a forgotten system. But above that quiet, something ancient moved. Echo, the last Vanguard-class warship of Earth's fallen navy, cut through the blizzard with her engines roaring like awakened thunder. Her hull, scarred and patched, glinted with defiance. She flew low, beneath radar, above fear. Inside the cockpit, Elias Brandt's fingers moved like they were home again. Every switch, every dial, every flicker on the screen answered him like an old friend returning from exile. Imperial skiffs closing fast, Echo's AI reported. 4 ships, lightly armored, high-speed interceptors. Recommended response, engagement. Elias narrowed his eyes. Understood. Beside him, Leo strapped into the auxiliary chair, jaw clenched, knuckles white. You ever fired a weapon from orbit? Elias asked. Leo shook his head. I've never even been in orbit. Elias gave a dry smirk. You're about to learn fast. The first skiff broke through the clouds, sleek, silver, and arrogant. Imperial transmission received unidentified vessel. Power down and surrender for inspection. You are in violation of Directive 112. Elias didn't respond. He flipped a switch. The weapons console lit red. Echo, he said calmly. Target the lead skiff. Target locked. The plasma pulse battery charged. Static built in the cabin air like a coming storm. Then, a single blast. White-hot energy lanced across the sky. The skiff didn't explode. It simply vanished. Its frame vaporized in less than a second. No debris, no flame, just a glowing scar where it had once been. Leo stared, stunned. That was a warning, Elias said flatly. The other three ships hesitated, swerving into evasive patterns, but it was too late. Echo was awake now. Her guns knew their purpose again. The next blast sheared off the wing of the second skiff. The third fired back, a short-range pulse cannon that barely grazed Echo's side. Shields absorbed the impact with a ripple across the outer hull. Elias banked the ship hard left, thrusters screaming. The old cruiser responded like it was young again. Secondary target destroyed. Third hostile disengaging. Retreat trajectory confirmed. The final skiff turned and fled back toward New Carthage. Inside the cockpit, silence returned. Leo exhaled like he hadn't breathed in minutes. We just took out 3 Imperial craft, he said. With a single ship. No, Elias corrected. We sent a message. He tapped the console. Broadcast this on open frequency. Every channel. Leo frowned. To the colony? To the whole damn sector. A low hum filled the cabin as Echo's comms pulsed to life. Elias leaned forward and spoke in a voice like steel beneath dust. This is Commander Elias Brandt, formerly of the Terran Defense Forces. This colony is under Earth protection. We may be forgotten, but we are not broken. To the Imperial Union, the stars remember us, and they will remember what comes next. He cut the transmission. Far away, in orbit above Valis 9, Imperial command ships caught the signal. Alarm klaxons sounded. Tactical officers reported a single hostile vessel using pre-fall Earth technology, something that, by their reckoning, shouldn't exist. In the colony below, civilians huddled in silence around open radios and projection walls. For the first time in their lives, they heard the voice of resistance. That night, Elias stood alone outside the hangar. The snow had stopped. The sky above was clear and full of stars, silent witnesses to a truth long buried. Behind him, Echo sat powered down for repairs. Her hull was blackened, her shielding thin, but her heart, her core, beat stronger than it had in years. Leo joined him, wrapped in a thermal coat, eyes wide with wonder and fear. They'll come back, the young man said. Yes, Elias replied, with more ships, bigger ones, smarter ones, and we won't stand a chance. Elias glanced at him. That depends. On what? He turned back to the sky. On whether anyone still remembers how to fight like humans. The night air was crisp, sharp enough to bite through layers of worn fabric. Below the mountain, New Carthage was no longer a quiet farming colony. It had become a fortress under siege. Imperial forces tightened their grip. Heavy patrols marched the streets in mechanized armor. Checkpoints multiplied like a spreading web, strangling communication lines and rationing supplies. Drones buzzed overhead, relentless eyes of an unyielding empire. But inside the colony, a spark burned brighter. Elias Brandt stood at the command console of Echo, watching through the ship's sensors as waves of troops prepared to storm the mountains. Fortifications are minimal, Leo reported, mostly mining equipment and hastily erected barricades. Elias rubbed his chin. We don't have walls or soldiers, only will and the old ship. Is that enough? Leo asked. Elias smiled, grim and cold. It has to be. Word had spread fast. Echo's first strike had shattered the illusion of Imperial invincibility. Colonists who had been passive, beaten down by years of occupation, now whispered of revolt. Small cells formed in shadowed corners. Mechanics, farmers, ex-soldiers like Elias himself. They scavenged weapons from abandoned outposts and jury-rigged explosives from mining charges. The fight was no longer just about survival. It was about freedom. Imperial commanders, frustrated and enraged, decided to crush the resistance with overwhelming force. From orbit, heavy cruisers deployed assault drones and orbital artillery, targeting the mountain ridge where Echo rested. Missiles arced across the sky like deadly fireflies, lighting the darkening landscape. Elias watched as a missile streaked toward the hangar bay. "Brace for impact," he shouted. The blast shook the mountain, sending shards of rock and metal flying. Echo's hull creaked, systems flashing warnings. "Damage control teams report," Elias ordered. Leo coordinated with the few engineers still alive, patches and firefights blending in the cold shadows. "We're holding," Leo said, voice steady despite the chaos. Outside, the ground forces moved in. Imperial soldiers in power armor advanced under heavy cover fire from mechanized units. They expected an easy victory. Instead, they met unexpected resistance. From hidden tunnels and concealed snipers, the colonists struck. Explosions rocked supply lines. Ambushes cut communication cables. The fight turned brutal and personal. Elias led sorties in Echo's small complement of assault drones, primitive but effective. The mountain became a battleground where every inch cost blood. In the command room, Elias faced a new challenge: morale. "We can't hold out forever," said Leo. "The Empire's resources are endless." Elias shook his head. "No army, no matter how large, can break the spirit of those who fight for home." He tapped a button, sending a message to every colony network on Valis 9. "To all free hearts and hands, the Empire threatens our homes. They seek to erase what it means to be human. But as long as one of us stands, we fight. Join us. Stand with Echo. Fight for Earth's legacy." The broadcast spread like wildfire. Across the valleys and scattered settlements, farmers, miners, and engineers set aside their tools and took up arms. The siege was no longer a one-sided assault. It had become a revolution. Elias looked out from the mountain's edge as the first star of dawn pierced the horizon. The battle was far from over. But for the first time in decades, hope burned bright, and humanity, flawed, stubborn, indomitable, was waking up. The dawn cracked open the sky in pale fire. Below the mountain, New Carthage braced itself for the final assault. Imperial forces had massed everything they had: armored columns, shock troops, an orbital bombardment poised to obliterate the resistance in one crushing blow. But the colony was no longer just a collection of frightened civilians. It was a battleground forged in sacrifice and steel. Elias Brandt stood at the helm of Echo, his hands steady despite the storm raging outside. "Prepare all weapon systems," he ordered. "Focus on defensive fire and support for ground units." The ancient ship groaned as power surged through her damaged hull. Shield emitters flared to life, casting a faint blue glow against the snow. "Echo ready to engage," came the AI's cold voice. Down below, Elias's allies readied their positions. Leo, now a battle-hardened leader, coordinated guerrilla fighters among the rocky crags and ruined buildings. "We hold here," Leo said, eyes fierce. "For every inch we lose, we make them pay tenfold." The colonists fought like cornered wolves, unyielding, desperate, and united. The Imperial barrage began. Orbital cannons carved the earth, sending geysers of ice and rock skyward. Assault troops poured from dropships, their armor glinting ominously. Echo fired bursts of plasma into incoming vehicles, her guns roaring like thunder. Assault drones swarmed enemy formations, disrupting their advance. But the tide was relentless. Elias locked eyes with the battlefield feed. Among the chaos, a squad of Imperial shock troopers breached the outer perimeter. He clenched his jaw. "Deploy countermeasures," he ordered. The ship released a salvo of electromagnetic pulses, frying enemy electronics and halting their momentum. "Now, ground teams, push forward." Amid the smoke and ruin, Leo led a desperate charge, blasting through enemy lines with improvised explosives. A rocket grazed his shoulder, but he pressed on. Near the command center, Elias confronted the Imperial commander in a brutal firefight. 2 men, 2 legacies, clashing for the soul of Valis 9. Minutes felt like hours. Echo's shields flickered, power waning, but Elias refused to yield. With one final burst, he disabled the enemy command ship's communications, severing the Imperial chain of command. Chaos spread through their ranks. The colonists surged forward, sensing victory, exhausted, battered, but unbroken. As the sun rose high, the mountain air filled with the sounds of a new day, not of conquest, but of freedom. Elias stood on the bridge of Echo, looking out at the battered but breathing colony below. He whispered, "This is only the beginning." Because the true war, the war for humanity's soul, was far from over.